Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet. We are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Tim James. How's it going today, man?
Good, Tom. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm enjoying this cool weather, this fall-like weather, and it's a nice break in the standard 90 degrees here in Texas. So,
Well, yeah, I get the feel. I mean, I know what you mean. We're into fall here, as you and I were discussing, but we can get hot days too.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So you're still based in Murfreesboro, but you're also from there, correct?
Yeah, man. I'll give you the edited version. I was born in Murfreesboro, and then after having gotten kicked out of one college and flunked out of another, not my proudest moment. Certainly not my parents' proudest moment, I promise you. But I decided to move to LA at 23, having never been on an airplane. And so I went to LA and was going to stay 6 months and stayed 12 years, which is kind of how, that's where I got into the music business. But yeah, when I came back, I kind of thought I've had enough big city to last me. So instead of moving to Nashville, I just moved to my hometown.
For sure. For sure. It makes a lot of sense because it's like you're far enough away from the big city that it's like, okay, I've got what I want. But if you need to get into town to record or do whatever it is, it's what is it, like a 30-minute drive? Probably not even.
Yeah, it's 30. Man, today or in today's world, it kind of depends on the flow of traffic.
Yeah.
Which is weird to say if you grew up here and there was 25,000 people, now there's 250,000.
Yep.
And all the outlying areas from Nashville are definitely becoming more populated. Of course, as a result of that, the congestion gets worse. But yeah, on a good day, from my house to my office on Music Row is 30 minutes.
Nice. It's so funny you kind of bring that up because I mentioned that I grew up in Chicago, and every time we'd go on a family trip to go visit my grandparents down in Florida, because they were living in Florida when we were younger, we'd drive, and coming through Nashville was always just like, okay, it'll be a quick stop through. It wasn't even factored into like how long it was going to take us because it was just super easy. And we're talking 15, 20 years ago at this point. And nowadays it's like, you got to drive through Nashville. You got to figure out what time you're going to be coming through, because if you hit traffic jam, that's going to delay you a good bit. So,
oh yeah, man, just getting out of town. It doesn't matter if I was telling somebody this the other day, it doesn't matter if you're going north, south, east, or west, because again, the outlying areas have become so popular.
Yeah.
That when you are heading out of town, if you don't leave before, and this is sad to say, if you don't leave before 3:30, you're toast. I mean, it's kind of the way it is, but part of the deal.
Right. So you said you had moved out to LA, and that's how you kind of got into the music industry. Did you move out to LA to pursue music, or was it once you got out to LA, music kind of got a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I didn't go out there for anything in particular, just to kind of go west, young man.
Yeah.
And I was kind of failing miserably at life in my early 20s, and I was like, man, I need to change. And I ran into a buddy of mine that he lived in LA at the time. And I said, man, what's it like in LA? And he was like, man, the sun shines 350 days out of the year. I live 8 blocks from the beach and the girls are pretty. And I was like, that's my new locale. So yeah, man, got out there, got into sales. Believe it or not, I got into pharmaceutical sales.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was making good money, and I just kind of hit a point where I was like, this is not what I want to do. And I always had loved music. I think if you grow up, in a blue collar family in the Nashville area, the sort of general opinion is that most of the people that are writing songs and making music are, drunks and so forth and so on. And my parents didn't know any different. They just, that sort of was their perception of it. So yeah, man, when I was out there, my first Mulligan wife, that's what I like to call her. She was an actress, and I would sit around and just kind of, pick on the guitar I had and sing. And then every now and then I would say, hey, check this out. I wrote this. And she was a very talented actress. And she at one point was like, "Why aren't you trying to do this for a living?" And I was like, "Well, because nobody ever told me I could."
Right.
And so, yeah, I put a band together, toured up and down the West Coast a little bit. And then I kind of realized I was a little old for that because I was in my mid 30s when I started this
Hmm.
journey. And so realized, I opened a show, actually, believe it or not, for the guy I had my first number one song with, for Toby Keith,
Oh,
uh,
well.
in 1989. I want to say, yeah, 89, at the Reno Convention Center with like 5,000 people there. And, I was scared out of my wits, but it was great. But again, I kind of realized it's odd looking back. I remember getting off stage and going to the little green room and thinking, that's probably my last, big gig, because uh, I don't think I'm as good as those other people. But I also knew that, having been a student of the game, that I could write.
Hmm.
And so I started making trips back here to Murfreesboro. The advantage I had over most people is when they come here, they got to find a place to stay and they got to rent a car. Well, I mean, I stayed with Ma and Pa,
Hmm.
while I was coming back, going to Nashville and pitching songs. And you get shot down a lot more than you get pats on the back. But I always wanted to move back to the South. I love it, and I moved back home. I got signed to a publishing deal. For people that don't know, like, all songs have publishers,
Hmm.
and so publishing companies sign writers and pay them. It's basically a draw against. But I got signed to a company that Don Schlitz, who wrote The Gambler, When You Say Nothing at All, and all these monumental songs,
Yeah.
he signed me to a pub deal. And so when I came home, I had that. But man, to be honest with you, in those days, pub deals paid, poverty wages.
Yeah.
But still, when you're up and coming, you think, hey, man, somebody's paying me to write songs. That was the objective. So yeah, man, I stayed with it. I went through a period. They closed up. Hayes Street Music was the name of it. Don's company. They closed up. And man, at 30, 9, I was staring down the barrel of 40 going, this is not what I'd planned on. I'm basically
Yeah.
unemployed. And I was painting houses for a living for my cousin, who's a professional house painter. And then I got a call, or a friend of mine called me and said, hey, man, I know somebody who's signing writers. And, again, if you're painting houses, you go, who? And so I went, had a couple meetings with a guy that was running a company that Toby Keith and TK Kimbrell had
Hmm.
started, manager, and they signed me. Toby came in and said, I'm going to cut a song from this catalog. And he heard a song that my buddy Rand Bishop and I wrote called My List, and he recorded it. And off that album, they had, which was the Pull My Chain album, they had 2 singles that both went number one. I Want to Talk About Me, and I'm Just Talking About Tonight. And then, to be honest with you, 9/11 happened. And Scott Borchetta, who was the president of, not president, he was head of promotions at DreamWorks. He said, man, if you want to put out a song that's going to resonate with people, put this song out. So they put it out and it went to number one. It stayed there for 5 weeks and
Wow.
has been on 11 million albums. So kind of the gift that keeps on giving.
Right. And I have a bunch of friends that are in like the acting side of things, and they keep telling me that it's like all you need is that one thing that just kind of resonates with people over and over again, and it's the gift that just keeps on giving.
Well, yeah, I would say that's true. If you get, in my opinion, if you get one, that's got to be the springboard for others, because
Hmm.
you could be a one-hit wonder, and in 5 years you're back working at Home Depot.
Hmm.
Um, I remember thinking to myself, I have to absolutely capitalize on this moment. I was signed to a publishing company, but I didn't leave it up to them.
Hmm.
I decided to get to know everybody that I could, and I'm still friends with them. Um, so yeah, I think that's the sort of, if people let that be the catalyst for something else, then yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Oh yeah, for sure. So before you moved out to LA, was music something you were interested in? Because you'd mentioned that you'd like had a guitar out there. Was that something you were just doing as like a hobby, or was it 100% like a brand new concept for you once you got out to LA?
No, still a hobby.
Mm.
And then, no, it wasn't until I was probably in my early 30s that a friend of mine was selling a guitar at a yard sale, and I saw it, and he said, "Just take it." So I took it, totally self-taught. But yeah, I started realizing, like, I focus primarily on lyrics.
Hmm.
And then I realized that even if you hear something in your head, you got
Yeah.
to figure out how to play that
Yeah.
if you want to write songs by yourself. If you are a lyricist and you want to find a composer, that's great. But I realized that I wanted to be able to have the little voice in my head translate to the guitar and then outwardly. And the only way to do that is learn to play.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of that one scene from the movie Coyote Ugly where they're like, if you want people to sing your songs, you gotta play and sing them yourself. So
Yeah.
it's such a weird callback, but it's still very accurate in the industry even today. So
Oh, yeah, man. I
yeah.
mean, I've got a couple friends that are just lyricists, and I really encourage them even to learn three, four chords on a
Mm-hmm.
guitar because there's 60, 70% of the hit songs that came out of Nashville for years that's why they called it three chords and the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one thing I'm really digging about Nashville right now is because I feel like several years ago it was like very taboo to play any music that wasn't originally yours, but now I'm kind of seeing this transition back to like the maybe 80s, maybe even into the 90s where they're going to the well of songwriters and playing songs that maybe they didn't necessarily write.
Yeah, yeah, I think definitely that's the case. My response to that would be if you looked at the careers of, I have one on this new Kenny Chesney record, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
very thankful to have. Um, Kenny Chesney's had such a remarkable career, one, because he's very talented, but also because he and George Strait and Tim McGraw, and man, they trusted writers to do what they did.
Mm, yeah.
And they knew that if they could, again, convey that on stage or into a microphone for a record, that was their best bet at then
Mm-hmm.
being able to do what they are best at, which is
Oh yeah.
perform.
Oh yeah. It feeds the entire cycle of the music industry. Like it's because when you're using songwriters and you play their music, obviously there's like I don't know the whole business back end of it, but it's like everybody's getting paid off of it. So that's it just kind of feeds the entire cycle.
Yeah,
So
sure.
so you're back in Tennessee now. How's it feel to kind of be back in your hometown? Obviously you've been there back for a bit, but you miss LA at all or
No,
no?
I miss. I talk to my buddies that are from LA. I talk to them all the time, and we always say the same thing. Like, I think we miss being young.
Mm,
Because when you're in your 20s and your only goal or your only requirement is to pay the rent and share the bills with two roommates and have enough to buy cheap beer and inexpensive food, like you kind of feel like you got the world by the tail. But I still have several of my best friends are in LA, so I go back a couple of times a year. uh, I don't have any regrets moving back. I love it here. I love visiting LA, but now, man,
yeah.
it's just probably my age. But after like 3 days, I'm like, the traffic and what I got to get
Mm,
out of here. But it's still beautiful.
yeah. Oh, it's not just your age because I've been to LA a couple times over the last couple of years and I'm good. After about 2 days, I'm good. So
Yeah, two night
yeah.
town anymore, but
Yep, I feel that. So you'd mentioned that you have a new song on the Kenny Chesney album. Is that your main focus right now is 100% songwriting or are you occasionally like putting out your cuts of stuff?
sometimes I do. On my, I mean, you can go to Apple Music and pull up Tim James. I cut a little EP about 3 years ago, which I
Mm,
love. So it's out there. But yeah, man, after I had my list, um, things kind of turned for me because if that's your entry into the music business and it's a number
mhm,
one song for 5 weeks, you've gone from being unknown to being the flavor of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And you, again, you got to capitalize on that.
Yep.
So I wrote twice a day for 10 years probably. And I ended up, a couple years after my list, I had a top 10 with a band called the Lost Trailers, but a top 10 is a top 10 in my world.
Yeah.
The following year, I had a top 10 on a guy named Bucky Covington. And then I had a song Trace Atkins put out called All I Ask For Anymore in 2009 that got nominated. It went to number 15, but it got nominated for Song of the Year at the Grammys.
Oh, wow.
So I got to go to the Grammys, and you can imagine the Grammys were in LA, so you can imagine me going back and getting my butt. Most of the guys I met were through playing basketball because I played very small college basketball. But we went to breakfast, and there was like 10 of us, and they were like, "Let me get this straight. 8 years ago, you were selling Robitussin, and now you're at the Grammys nominated for Song of the Year." And I was like, "Buddy, nobody's more surprised than me." But then, after I'd had a couple more hits, then I wrote a song with my friend Doug Johnson that Lee Brice took to number one called Love Like Crazy. And then, like 2 years after that, I ended up with George Strait's 60th number one song. So I'm still, I still write. I still have a publishing deal with a company called Porchlight Music, and my friend Tim Medlin runs that. And yeah, man, I'm getting, I guess the lesson to be learned for me and others that are listening is about 2 years ago, even though I've had a pretty good career, I wish I would have had more. I had 2 or 3 singles that they said these are going to be number one songs, and they tanked at 15. But you got to, when you say tanked at 15, there's a lot of people that would kill to have a number 15 song. But a couple of years ago, Tom, I was like, not even 2 years, a year and a half ago, it's been, I had a single out with Chris Stapleton about 3-4 years ago called Either Way. And it's the only song that he's put out that didn't go like number one or top 5. Now it was from the From a Room Volume 1 record. And that album won a Grammy Award, which I have over here on my wall, for Album of the Year. So I got a Grammy certificate. And matter of fact, I just got a notification last night that I have one on his new record. The record's called Higher, and the song is called Loving You on My Mind. But that album has been nominated for a Grammy for Album of the Year. But point being, like a year and a half ago, I thought, okay, it's been a good run.
Yeah,
I'm happy. Everything is cool. And man, in a matter of 4 months, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know this was going to happen. My buddy, Kendall Marvel, that I wrote, him and Chris wrote Loving You on My Mind, and we also wrote Either Way. Kendall sent me a text and said, "Have you seen the new Stapleton album cover?" And I was like, "No, why would I?" He said, "Pull it up on the internet." And I did. And then the song we wrote was on there. And I was like, dang, man, that's a nice wake up surprise.
Right.
And then in a matter of like 4 months, that's what I mean. It was weird. I got actually Kenny Chesney, I got one on his new album called One More Sunset that I wrote with Danny Myrick and Brett James. And then 2 months later, George Strait was cutting a new album, and I got one on that. So, my point is, it's a testament to doing the work. You got to do the work. You got to write them, and then you never know. I mean, these songs, the 2 songs I got, the one on Stapleton and the one on George Strait, those songs are 15 years old.
Yeah,
so, never know.
You just got to commit to it, and keep pushing. Like, I mean, this entire conversation has just kind of been a testament to that, where it's like you just mentioned that you had a couple songs that were 15 years old, and it's like you just don't know if and when somebody's going to pick it up. Like, you could write it off completely, and then 15 years later it's like, oh, okay, so
you just never know, man. So both those songs I did write with Chris Stapleton. I started writing with Chris when he was new to town.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time we wrote a song and he started singing, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't know what that is, but that's crazy good.
Right.
So, that's been beneficial for me. But yeah, again, even when I told somebody this on a podcast the other day, when I wrote Love Like Crazy, it's about my parent, about Doug Johnston and I. We kind of had the same upbringing, but my dad passed away and 14 or 13 years ago, and I I didn't want to write a song. Like I was
Mm.
like, I mean, I'm grieving. And then the day that I went in to write with Doug Johnson, I was totally on the fence. Like, man, I'm not going. Forget it. Like I'm not in the mood. I don't want to go. But I could hear my dad in the back of my
Mm.
head saying, go to work, do your best, don't, saying all those things. So I went and I told Doug, I was like, I want to write a song about my parents. They were married for 52 years, and the song we changed it to 58. But and Doug started playing that little riff, and then we kind of wrote the song about our parents. Point being, had I not gone that day,
Mm.
it's not happening.
Right, right, right. I keep having to tell myself that all the time. If you've got an opportunity to go do something, whatever it is, go do it because you never know what's going to happen. So,
That's it.
yeah. But before we continue, I do want to thank you for joining us. This is a part of our pancreatic cancer fundraising marathon that we are currently doing. So I want to thank you for joining us during this process. Um, One thing that I always like to do with musicians that come on is we want to pass on knowledge to younger musicians that are maybe just starting, or young songwriters that are just kind of getting their first licks in, if you will. What advice do you have for young songwriters out there?
My advice would be to buy my book. Sorry, I made myself cough. I wrote a book called Going Crazy, Left
Mhm.
Foot, Right Foot, Breathe. And it's not just about, excuse me, how to sort of get your foot in the door in the music business. It's also about the thing we were just talking about. The book is really focused more on perseverance.
Mhm.
Uh, I think, mental health for men is kind of a taboo subject. Not for
Mhm.
me, it's not. Um, I personally don't give a rip what anybody else thinks. So as a result of that, it kind of allows you some freedom to kind of be yourself. But
Yeah.
I wrote a book because I've been through, two divorces. I've been through the ups and downs of the music business, buddy. I mean, again, when you're on top, everybody loves you. And then
Mhm.
you disappear. It could be literally in a matter of months or certainly years if you don't have anything going on. You can't get a call back. You can't. Now,
Mhm.
now I'm back in the fold because I'm getting cuts. But the book sort of details um, how I did it
Mhm.
because it was not easy. I mean, I came back here, made some inroads, but I definitely continued to push. Like I'm driven by my own fear. One,
Mhm.
because I want to go back to painting houses, and two, by my desire to be successful. So all of that is in my book, which is available on Amazon or at thetimjames.com. I don't advise for younger songwriters, do the work. I mean, that's my big, and I would also say this to young people. And I wrote with a young girl the other day. And so my first question to people is, what's your objective? If your objective is to be on country radio and you sound nothing like anybody on country, or your writing sounds like nothing on, well, then I would ask you to sort of re-examine your process,
Mhm.
because if your goal is to be on one of those records, the chances are you've got to write something that's in that wheelhouse. I get too many people, not too many, but I get some people that uh, play things, with the title Grandma's Biscuits that sounds like something off a bad folk record.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's not, the way it was put to me years ago is, this is the major leagues.
Yeah.
This is the bigs. And you have to, you got to have your big boy pants or big girl pants on. And people like me will say, like, that's just not that good.
Mhm.
And so get better. That's the deal. I have a friend of mine that same thing. Like, he's older than me, but why can't I get a cut? Because you're not writing commercial songs. Like, if
Mhm.
you want to be, if you have the ability to be a, Sturgill Simpson or uh, Noah Kahn, one of those guys, that's great. Do it. But if you want to be a songwriter write songs that the people up the road here are going to go, man, that's in the, I love that.
Mhm.
And if you're writing something with a, saxophone intro for a country pit, you're probably barking up the wrong tree.
Mhm. There's a time and place for everything. And if you're depending on like the way you said it made a whole lot of sense. And it's like if you're trying to be in the industry and do industry things, you need to do what the industry likes.
Seems pretty simple to me. The way it was put to me years ago, Tom, was if the market calls for oranges, you have to make a certain number of oranges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not to say challenging the genre or stretching the genre, not to say that that's not welcome, but if your goal is to do what the industry is doing, then you have to do what the industry is doing, you know?
I mean, there's guys in town, dude, that have had 50 number one songs. 50.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you any of them, but they have sort of figured that out. They
Mm-hmm.
they figured out the formula. 1 4 6 5 5 1 4. The number system. I mean, G A E minor D.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and they write the same stuff over and over. Well, that's what they wanted, and I applaud them for that.
Yeah.
They knew the market called for oranges, and they went to the factory day in and day out and churned out a bunch of oranges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's funny you brought up the number system because I had somebody because I had never heard of the Nashville number system before, and somebody explained it to me the other day, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So
Yeah, they've been doing that for so long, and I still don't. I mean, I know it, but some of my buddies, it's just second nature,
yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So outside of music and writing and all that stuff, what do you like to do for fun? Are you still playing basketball, or are you what do you like to get into when you have some free time?
Man, I ruptured the tendons in my ankle, and so basketball's out. I shoot by myself like
Hmm.
5 days a week.
Yeah.
I exercise a lot. I think for me, again, this is detailed in my book. The mental and the physical are connected.
Hmm.
So for me to be able to sort of stay mentally healthy, I try to stay physically healthy. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy a couple of cold beers and a cheeseburger every now and then, because if I want to, I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
But I still write. I do a lot of corporate gigs, where they'll hire 3 writers to do a Writers in the Round show.
Yeah.
And so I do a bunch of those. And then I have 2 daughters that are 19 and 16. And then I play a fair amount of golf.
Nice. Nice. I just played golf for the first time in about 20 years, about a month ago. And let's just say going in cold turkey probably wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, that would be a tough one, man. That would be super tough.
It was like after hole 9, I was like, guys, I have to bow out. I physically cannot move right now. Like everybody was like, oh no, golf is easy. It's like, no, I've played golf. I've played 18 holes day after day. I know what it feels like. It's not easy, but they were like, oh, just come join us and play until you can't no more. And I'm like, okay. So
well, that's why you put some. That's why they have a cart girl, Tom.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you can get the drink. I go on my golf trip. I mean, I just went like a month ago, and yeah, we play 18 Wednesday, 36 Thursday, 36 Friday, and 18 Saturday.
Yep. I'd be on the ground after probably about 27 holes, maybe just on the ground. So yeah. But no, that's cool. I really dig that. So I do appreciate you joining us and hanging out for a little bit and chatting. If anybody wants to check out your website, your socials, just kind of keep track of what you're doing, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, thetimjames.com is my website. Again, the book is called Going Crazy, and the subtitle's Left Foot, Right Foot, Breathe, which sort of goes back to our earlier conversation about perseverance. When you're going through certain periods in your life, you feel like you're losing your mind, or I did.
Yeah.
And again, if you couple, personal trials and tribulations with the ups and downs in the music business, there were moments in the last 5 years where I thought I've absolutely lost my mind. So I started writing about it. But what I discovered, even through writing the book, was get through the night. get through the day. It's just perseverance. If you can just, left foot, right foot, breathe. I get up in the mornings. Now I'm like, it's all good. But during my darkest times, I would wake up and say, all right, left foot, right foot, breathe. You gotta go and make another day. But yeah, I'm on Instagram at, I think it's at Timothy James 2182. Facebook, I'm just Tim James. But yeah, thetimjames.com. And the book is available there as well as on Amazon.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I absolutely appreciate it. It's been a blast chatting with you. And I hope a lot of the young musicians give this a listen and take some notes of if they want to be a songwriter in Nashville, like take some notes from our conversation here. So,
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Tom.
yeah, absolutely. Once again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll be back in a little bit.